Happy New Year, everyone. I'm Madeline DiNono, President and CEO of the Gina Davis Institute. Before we get started, I wanted to introduce our fabulous ASL interpreters who will be with us today. We have Darcy French Meyerson and we have Sharon Pierre-Louis. Please pin their video to keep them on your screen for the entirety of the event. Also, closed captioning is available at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We'd like to acknowledge that the land on which we are gathered, albeit virtually, in Los Angeles is the ancestral home of the Tongva Nation. We honor and pay respect to their elders and descendants, past, present, and emerging, as they continue their stewardship of these lands and waters. Now, joining us with opening remarks is our longtime partner, Jeannie Mao, Senior Vice President of TV Programming, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at NBC Universal.
Thank you, Madeline. Hello, everyone. My name is Jeannie Mao. Thank you for being here, part of this conversation. I oversee NBCU launch the umbrella brand for the DEI efforts across NBC Universal's entertainment portfolio. We provide access and opportunity to talent at any point of their careers in scripted, unscripted, and late night. We are so proud and thrilled to present today's conversation about NBC's hit drama Found alongside the Gina Davis Institute. They have been one of NBCU's longstanding and valued partners. We also share the commitment to fostering inclusion and equity in the entertainment industry, and we are so thrilled to be partnering with them on this. Thank you, Madeline, and your exceptional team for graciously hosting today's anticipated discussion. Take it away, Maddie.
Thank you so much, Jeannie. We feel the same way. So we are so excited to spotlight our favorite new NBC hit TV show, Found, which follows the exciting adventures of public relations specialist Gabby Mosley and her crisis team, who vigilantly find missing people, many who are from marginalized communities and whose cases typically never receive the same media attention or resources. And it's already been picked up for a second season. So if y'all haven't watched them all, you better get watching. And the finale is January 16th, and you can binge all the episodes on Peacock. So we are going to kick off with a clip from the pilot. And before we do, please let us know in the Q&A, how many of you seen the show? Are you new to the show? We will be monitoring the Q&A. All right, let's roll the clip.
And there was no one big lead, just hours of dedicated police analysis.
Of course, Captain Mallory's out here taking credit for our work. Marquis is safe, that's all that matters.
Gabby!
Miss Mosley!
Gabby, how closely did you work with the DCPD on this case? Were you part of the rescue operation tonight?
My team and I were the rescue operation.
While I'm sure Miss Mosley and her team have been invaluable to the Evans family, they are not cops.
You're right, we're not. We're a crisis management firm. We're PR specialists, we're lawyers, tech experts, private investigators, all doing the job the police seem too busy to do.
And what do you say to the people who call you vigilantes?
We find missing people who have slipped through the cracks, and we bring them home.
While we appreciate Ms. Mosley's passion.
Passion? You're talking to a woman who 20 years ago had to rescue herself from her kidnapper because no one was looking. Who is this?
Sarah Holden, Senator Holden's missing daughter.
Sarah went missing 29 hours ago while playing in the park with her brother. There isn't a person in America who hasn't seen Sarah's face all over their TVs, highly increasing her chances of being found. Now, who is this? This is why there will always be a need for what I do. Dashika has been missing from the DC area for the last 2 weeks, and no one is talking about her. I sincerely hope we find Sarah, I do. But while you keep prioritizing the missing high-profile blonde girls of the world, my team and I will gladly continue to pick up the slack for the rest.
It is my honor to introduce our fabulous panelists. Please turn all your cameras on, starting with Nkechi Okoro Carroll, who is the executive producer and showrunner of Found, Sanae Hoffman, executive producer and co-showrunner, the Shanola Hampton, star and producer, Demaine Davis, who is the director of the pilot, and Sarah Schechter, executive producer. So welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
And so we call, so it's NK for short, in case people are like, why is she calling her NK? So it starts with a script and badass women breaking boundaries. So NK, I just want to level set a little bit. I mean, you are the only Black woman besides Shauna to have 3 network dramas during a broadcast season. I don't think you grew up wanting to be a writer. So had you always planned on building an empire?
To a certain degree, I did grow up loving television, especially. I probably consumed way too much TV than any child ever should, but I just had such a great love for it. But for any of our audience members that are from West Africa, I have traditional Nigerian parents. So my career options were doctor, banker, lawyer. So even the little kid inside of me who did want to be a writer sort of put that dream on hold for a little bit and studied economics and French. But it was one of those things where it just never let go of me. And so the whole time I was working as an economist at the Federal Reserve, I would spend my nights and weekends shooting short films, writing plays for theater. I would literally leave the trading desk at night after sending analysis to Chairman Greenspan and go to a black box theater down the street in New York and put up whatever play we'd written, and then I'd be back on the trading desk at 6:30 the next morning because I was in my 20s. Who needs sleep? It's a very different story now. We all need it. But yeah, so that's kind of how the dream took off. And it was one of those things where when I realized I couldn't let go of it, I didn't want to look back one day and regret not pursuing it. And so God bless my husband, because we'd only been married like a couple months. And I was like, we're moving to LA. He was like, that's where we need to be for the dream to come true. Let's do it. And so I did, moved out here and started writing sort of my own original stuff. And eventually a script landed in the right hands. I started my career on procedurals doing The Finder, and I've been blessed to work ever since.
Well, and we are so grateful that happened to you. Now, in terms of the inspiration for the show, you had mentioned in an interview that there was something that you saw in the news media in about 2014, 2015, and it kind of sparked you to start digging in. So can you talk about the genesis of the story?
Yeah, the genesis for all of my shows is for them to leave the world a better place than how they found it. And to be an agent of change. Like, I feel like we're all given our weapons of choice that have to do with our skills. My weapon is my keyboard. So if I can use that to make a difference in the world, that's what I want to do. And so for this particular project, there was a tweet that went viral that was about 14 missing Black and brown girls in the DC area. None of mainstream media was talking about it, but within our community, within the Black community, within the Latino community, there was a lot of viral discussion on it and about why it wasn't a bigger story, because it was in such a contained period of time. And I just remember at the time feeling so helpless. It felt ridiculous that I was sitting in an office, sort of like writing my TV shows, and real world issues were happening that affect people who look like me, people who look like my children, like my sister, like my mother. And so I started doing a lot of research to just sort of understand how that happens, because I felt like if I could do that, then I could figure out what would help be a solution. And out of that research is where the character of Gabby Mosley was born, and the role that public relations can play in sort of making all the difference in who gets the attention when they go missing and who doesn't. And so through all of that, through many iterations of Gabby, through shaping the story of how do I make it entertaining to make sure people keep tuning in every week while we're talking about these real issues. And that is ultimately how the storyline for Found was born.
Fantastic. So we're building on this theme of agents of change and badassery among women. And so, Sarah, I want to turn to you because some of you may not know, but Sarah is the badass woman, chair and partner at Berlanti, and you've also had a long time relationship with NK through some of the other shows. So I'd love for everyone to know a little bit about you, and also how you got excited or heard about this project from NK.
Yeah, I actually started my career working in feature films. I worked at Warner Brothers as a feature executive for a long time, and then I partnered with Greg Berlanti. And I sort of said, I don't know anything about television. He's like, I'll teach you in 2 weeks. It's easy. And it was probably more like a year, but it was I just love storytelling, and I always have. And I think trying to tell stories about people that don't always have stories told about them, telling stories for people that don't always have stories told for them, and honestly trying to really focus with intention on creating roles for women that are complicated and three-dimensional. And I think we do that across all of our shows, and it's something that's really important to me and important to Greg. And I think that NK we started working with on season 1 of All American, and it was sort of love at first sight. And then as NK's energy is very infectious, much like Shanola. The two of them together, it's a dangerous combination. But she'd mentioned having this idea, and it was something that we immediately fell in love with, and I did, because it is about, like, my father was a journalist who was really focused on issues of race and class and equity and inclusion, and it was so frustrating for him in the mainstream media how often these stories weren't told and weren't the focus. And we think the news is just the news, but it's not. It's like there are people in power who are deciding what we talk about, what we think about, and we think is important. And so the idea of this character, the idea of this story, the idea of being able to talk about this in a way that's entertaining. People don't want to be lectured. They want to be entertained. They want to care. But it's a way to open people's eyes. And I think that's what was so exciting. So we began the rather long journey to get this on the screen.
Can you go a little bit deeper? Because people think that these things happen overnight, and I know this was a journey. Can you just talk about that a little bit? Because you didn't give up and you were vigilant. So what was the journey? A year, 2 years? Like, what did that mean for you?
When was the beginning of this journey, NK?
I mean, in total, it was about 7 years. And so I was probably a couple years into this when I brought it to Sarah and Greg, and God bless them, because they were like, yes, we see the vision. We love what you're trying to do. We fully support you. Like, we want to help you get this on the air. And then we did sell it. Very successful pitches around town. We ended up selling it to a network that ultimately passed on it before we ever shot the pilot. And it was one of those things where, that happens as a writer, and it always feels like, you gave birth to a child and then someone's like, your child's not cute, and threw it out. And you're like, oh, my heart. And it happens quite frequently in this business, but there was something about all of our energy around this project that could not let it go. And I'll never forget, Sarah called and she's like, we will get this on the air one day. Like, it's meant to be on television. And it was one of those things where we were just like, it's going to be the right time with the right partner in the right space, and never changed the vision. And we never gave up hope. And sure enough, 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, NBC came knocking, and we're like, do you still have that script about that show? And we were like, we sure do. And that was the start of the process for getting Domain involved, getting Shanola Hampton on board, all of that wonderful stuff to get to shooting the pilot.
So
go ahead, Sarah. No, Greg and I have had, like, the experience of most of our hit shows have been that they are not on the network that initially developed them. I think you really have to have a perseverance. If you're trying to tell a story that isn't told often, you have to, you really, there's a lot that needs to line up in terms of executives, network, studio, like all these things that have to kind of work in your favor, and the timing has to be right. Because I think that, but these are the stories we're telling. We have a show called You that was it was a 3 networks. And it's just, we don't, and a lot of our Riverdale was, there's a lot of shows that we've had that were at multiple networks. Honestly, it's kind of a good sign for us. And so I never believe people when they tell me something I like isn't good enough. I tend to think they're maybe wrong, or maybe it's not right for them, but that doesn't mean that it's not good enough and it's not right. And I think it's that kind of, confidence and perseverance that I think is really key to the success of this show, and my career, NK's career, Shanola's career, Domain's career is like that sort of like to keep going and to keep believing that it's possible. And I think once we started developing at NBC, which is a great partnership, the question really was about the end of the pilot and if we really wanted to go there. And for those that have seen it, understand. And I will say NK had a fortitude and strength of vision that I'm in awe of, because at a certain point I'm a producer, so I'm like, maybe we could try it the way they were talking about it. And it was like, no, let's not do that. We have to stick to what makes this special, and we all knew what it was. And so and NBC got on board, Lisa Katz, and so it was very exciting when we finally got to make it. But it felt like we were good. I didn't make that call like just to make NK feel better. I really believed it.
So this is a great example of having unshakable belief and also women helping women. So I just want to note to self, because a lot of people talk about women not helping women. And I think it's going to be even more interesting because Shanola, I'm going to go over to you. And so, talk about, you have said a baddie with heels on who is in control of her destiny and has a man in the basement. I also want to talk to you a little bit about the Kelly Williams of it, getting you to NK, and just your story of how this whole thing came together, because it's a fabulous story.
Well, it's great. I had a relationship with NBC right when I was still on my other show, and I signed an overall deal with them, and it was a group of all women, fabulous, Susan Rovner, Lisa Katz, and it was the best energy. And I knew even really before I was out of the marriage was shameless, I jumped right into bed with them, and it just felt right. They saw the vision of what I wanted to do with my career. We tried a few things that didn't work, that I got to produce on, lead, and those things didn't work. And I was still trying to get my directing career really going, because as an actor, the offers were coming in. That was sort of the easy, but I was really on the directing hustle. And my agent at the time said, you got to meet with Kelly Williams. She knows how to make the transition from actor to director. She's one of the baddest there is. I met with Kelly, and it was love at first Zoom. And we talked about everything. And she was so empowering and encouraging and told me exactly how it works and made me feel like I wasn't. You feel crazy once you reach a level of success. Things come a little, you still hustling, but it's different. And she was like, this is how it is. And it's also this time. And she made me feel really comfortable about, I knew I had the fire for directing and the passion, but I think people are not seeing it. And she said, this is who you need to meet. You have to meet NK. She does all my, and she's telling me all these great things. She said, you two are going to hit it off so well. And I know she's going to love you. I'm going to make this meeting happen. Long and the short is I finally get to meet with the great NK, who wasn't eating. She was like meeting at her lunch, and one of her cast brought her lunch to her lead, and because you have to take care of her because she will just work as I'm in this meeting. But I could see the love that everyone had for her just for that, and her energy and her leading with love attitude, which is, when you hear somebody speak your language, it's a rare thing, especially in Hollywood. And it was to the T. And I remember getting off the call and just being like, no, you don't understand. I feel like I just met me in a lot of ways, just from the way her philosophy about what we do and how we want to be on a set, or how she carries her set. Anyway, what I didn't know then, but I found out later, is that the time that I'm sitting up here trying to be like, please, ma'am, hire me as a director. I'm really, really good. I promise I come prepared. She was seeing Gabby Mosley. And by the end of the meeting, she said, okay, cool. Do you still act? And I said, girl, I still have a mortgage. Yes, I still act. Of course I still act. And she told me about the script, and crazily enough, it was right at the time that I was still at my overall with NBC. They were figuring out there. So she said that, and I said, that hasn't come across my desk yet, because I was getting everything from NBC. I was like, oh no, I would know that. And anyway, I read it. I'm like, okay, this is good. Most importantly, I like that we were really getting into talking about stories that you don't get to see on television. And I knew how risky that was, especially with a woman of color speaking about a marginalized community, all of that I knew was risky. So I'm reading the script. I'm like, okay, she's bad. Oh, she's going to look nice. Okay, she's going to, and then the man was in the basement and I said, what in the heck just happened? I said, I have to do this. I have to do this. And the rest, as they say, is history. But it all started because Williams, a woman, was trying to champion me as a director, a female crossing over, and then put me in with NK. And then Kelly Williams comes back in front of the camera. This is all serendipitous. This is when I knew that this show was going to be something so special. The pilot, the energy, you cannot describe the energy that was on the show. All females in the AD department. It was just, and we had a ball, okay? We had so much fun. But one of the things, most importantly, that I've never seen in a crew is the passion for the project. Real, true, wanting to tell these stories and be a part of this right here, not just for a job's sake, but to be a part of this. And a lot of that has to do with NK and what she brings and her vision, but also the stories that we were being able to tell. So it's just a dream job.
So I'm going to go over to Domain, but NK, I don't know how many minutes into the Zoom with Shanola before you started texting
I want
Sarah
to know this too.
everybody saying like, we had to have her, like, was
It
it
was pretty fast. It was pretty fast because I actually could not tell you a word Shanola said to me, maybe after a minute in. And I felt so bad about that because I really do. It's important to me to especially help female directors cross over and get their first episodes. And so that was what that whole Zoom was for. Kelly Williams directs for me on my other shows. And so that I felt so bad that I could not tell you what she pitched as a director because I was so sure I was looking at Gabby Mosley that my mind was blown. And I'm texting Sarah under the desk and I'm texting Craig under the desk. And so it was pretty fast. And then I had to double back and be like, okay, you probably owe Shanola an apology because she probably thought you just zoned out during the meeting because I was not engaging the way I normally would because my mind was just screaming, she's alive. Like Gabby Mosley is alive.
Oh my goodness. So talk about transitioning and opening up opportunities. Domain, I want to go to you. You have directed numerous hours of spectacular TV, but this was the opportunity for you to direct a pilot, which is a big deal. So I'd love for you to talk about, because you've had relationships and they're like no accidents, specifically when you look at the show. If you talk about what brought you into this position, and also setting the tone. Like, what was your strategy in terms of, okay, I'm going to direct this pilot and this is what I want to accomplish?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having us and for letting me be here. I find that I'm usually a pretty good predictor of figuring out like what's happening in film and in television. And I can be like, oh, okay, she's pregnant. All right, they're not going to kill the dog. The dog's jumping in the car. That's not going to happen. And as I'm reading NK's incredible script, I'm like, ooh, these characters, this is juicy. Okay, I can see. All right, we're probably going to get backstory on this person and this person. And I'm going. And immediately I was struck with how beautiful it was and how it was saying things that hadn't been said, things that I knew. Last October in Ohio, more than 30 young Black teenagers went missing under the age of 21. And the only reason why I know that is because Miss Viola Davis put it on her IG. Like, no one is talking about that. And so I'm thinking about all these things and I'm starting to think about visually, okay, I would do this. And then I got to the end. And let me tell you, the scream I scrumped, as the kids say, I was off. Like neighbors were like, what's going on? I was floored. I had no idea what was going to happen. It was not unlike the scream that I scrumped last night, Soné, that episode, that script. Oh my God, I can't. I'm going to talk to you later, please. Y'all are killing me. So I read it and I'm like, oh, I have to do this. And what it did is it unearthed a memory that I had not talked to about anyone. When I was about 7 or 8, there was a clown that was driving around neighborhoods and they were snatching children.
Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah, it was only the Black neighborhoods. It was never on the news. Everybody knew about it. And one day I saw the clown. And it was like a chocolate brown van, and the wheel wells were rusted, and the guy was in the back of the van. He was taking something out, and it was one of those suits that tied in the back so you could see, and he was wearing like jeans and like a dirty white t-shirt. And I was just across the street. I was holding a ball, and he went around and he got back in the van and he drove off. And I had not thought about that in years. That's like decades. But when I thought about it, I could remember everything so clearly. Like I could describe, I didn't get the license plate number, but I could describe everything to you, the smell of the day. I remember what that day smelled like. And I thought, oh my God, if nothing happened to me other than me seeing this, and I remembered all this, what about these characters? What are they going through? Like, how are they living? And so what I thought is, well, they're going to have to keep moving, because if they sit, then they're going to be saddled with their own memories, and they're going to have to think about everything that's happened. And so they're going to keep moving. And so we're going to use handheld camera, and it's all going to be action and on its feet and moving all the time. And then of course they're looking for someone, so they have to keep moving. And then another thing I thought is just shadows. Even in the daytime, there can be shadows, and how they would probably not feel safe even when they're shadows, because there's so much trauma. So another thing that actually recently I remembered is I was in a cab once, and a van went by. It's always a van. And in that van, it was nighttime, and I was in my 20s. I heard a girl screaming in the van, like blood-curdling screams coming from the van as it was driving by the cab. And I remember being like, I don't, should I tell the cab, like, go follow that van? I tried to get the license plate number. I couldn't. And I'm like, should I just call the cops? And it actually, I thought, well, what are the cops going to do? And it reminded me of last night. What Soné wrote last night, the doctor who said, I want to believe Aisha, but, after a night of partying, people don't, like, that's what we're up against, and that's what this show goes against. And to say that if you just pay just a little bit more attention, because there's such a lack of attention on these groups of people, if you pay a little bit more attention, maybe we can save some people. Like, we have a choice, we have agency, we have power in what we do every day. And a part of that power is NK and her intention and what she's doing, and the shows that she's doing, and the incredible environments that she's creating. The power to have all female assistant director team, which I'd never had before, and that was incredible. Telling these stories, like, that's a choice, and I'm just so honored that I get to be a part of it, and a part of a show that not only is entertaining and has beautiful people and has someone like Shinola who just brings so much incredible, wonderful energy every day to everything that she does, but a show that can do some good by making people aware.
So I am going to go to Soné, but I don't want to gloss over the fact that there was intention. In addition to bringing lived experiences, there was intention. So Sarah always talks about impact over intent, and there was a intent that was executed with this all-female AD team. So I don't want to gloss over that before I go to Soné. And so I just want, whether it's NK or Sarah or Demaine, to really talk about that, because that you created a vibe, you created an atmosphere, for that set, for that pilot and some of the episodes. So I just want someone to talk about that a little bit, and then I'm going to jump into Soné.
Well, and here's the thing. I would love to say that I sat down and I was like, you know what? It's going to be all female everything. I didn't. I sat down and I said, I want the best people for the job. And the best people for the job for a show like this, I was so protective of our actors and what they would have to go through to do these roles, and therefore the set environment. I mean, listen to Demaine's voice. The minute she started speaking, don't you feel like you just got a warm hug and a massage? I mean, just that calming vibe. I mean, it's real. And so I was very intentional about the set I wanted to create, the safe environment I wanted to create for our actors to be able to do what they do best. We have child actors on the show, and I was like, we will not traumatize these children. We will bring them joy. I mean, look, I saw my Christmas tree up in the office. Joy is very important to me. I was like, we have to figure out a way to make this Disneyland and joyful while being true and authentic to this. And the best people to execute that turned out to be all women. And maybe the intent was, we don't immediately write off women for these roles, the way that happens often in this industry because, oh, they've never done it before. Oh, there's always an excuse, right, for why someone else is better for the job, usually that is not a woman. We don't do that. We literally sat down and we're like, let's see everybody. We want the best people for the job. We want people who share our vision, share our passion, and are so good at what they specifically do. And it gives me such great joy to say that was all women.
But and Kale, I just want to add to that because I think that's true, certainly. But I think it's more than that. I think that there is, you know, when you think about confirmation bias, right? We had a female line producer. And so I do think that it is about having real intentionality in the choices that you make and your awareness of the choices that you make without thinking. Because like for a long time, the only people in positions of power were white men and their friends were other white men. And they're not bad guys. A lot, like I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying that there is a comfort and ease when you're around people that are like you. And I think what we have to look at is what makes us like each other is not necessarily, you know, our gender or background. It is our values. It is what we're trying to do. It is what we're trying to bring into the world and what we're trying to say. And so it's so interesting to me because we pay really, really close attention to our numbers, you know, and I know numbers are just numbers, but you want to really check yourself as a producer, as someone who employs people. You want to check yourself. You want to make sure you're really being fair, that your numbers are at least aligned with the population, if not more so. But I do think that when you have women of color running shows, when you have women of color or just women in positions of power and authority or being number one on the call sheet, the trickle down effect is like a level of comfort that attracts other women, that attracts other people of or that attracts men that are like really comfortable in that environment, which is also a blessing and great, and the Greg Berlantes of the world. And like, so it is making a conscious choice, but it's like, who are you empowering to make these decisions? And are you being thoughtful about it? Are you making sure you've not just met with men who have lovely credits, you know? And I think Demain and I are working on something else together right now. And it's something we talk about and think about. And I do. So I think sometimes when you put people in positions of authority, there is a confirmation bias that is more diverse and more inclusive. And so I think that there's real opportunity always in that. Like, I'll tell you, I'll look at how many directors of color get booked on a season of television. And like, I'm looking at what NK is doing, but I'm never worried about it. I know what it's going to be, you know? So I do think though, it's like a lot of people want to be diverse and respectful, and they want to create stories that reflect a lot of people's experiences. But you have to keep doing that even when the first 5 people that you already know and like aren't available, right?
And just to piggyback off what you're saying, Sarah, because often what I'll hear from my counterparts who are like, oh, how were you able to do X, Y, and Z is, you know, there's so much you have to do as a showrunner. There's so much you have to do as an executive producer to get something off the ground. I don't have time to dedicate it to this. And my answer to that is always, you put the right people in place. You don't. I did not have to spend a lot of time on this pilot, finding the right women for this pilot, because it is so organically part of who we all are that it did become this trickle down effect. And so to what Sarah is saying, I'm always telling people, it's not like you're going to have to work super hard at it at every stage all the time, but you take that time to sort of make it organically part of your edict, part of who you are, part of how you do business, it will fall into place.
Thank you so much. So Nay, I want to go over to you because we're talking about power. We're talking about opportunity. We're talking about bringing your authentic self. And you have a marriage with NK, which people may not realize, you know, work marriage. I'd love to talk about your story and your journey into connecting, you know, with this project. I know you've had relationships here. And then I have a part 2 for you in terms of really talking about the writer's room, but just your journey first.
Yeah. So everything that people have said about NK on this Zoom so far is so true. NK and I have a mutual friend in common, and I just wrapped another show. And I was available, and Jamie, our friend, said, NK has a show, and I think it was probably they were just waiting for the pickup. I mean, but everyone had loved it, like NBC, Warner Brothers, everyone was loving it. And so NK and I jumped on a Zoom, and immediately she felt like a sister. I mean, her smile, like, look at her smile, the warm smile. She just brings you in, and she just makes you feel so comfortable. And we just connected within the first couple minutes. And mind you, I had read the pilot, and I watched the pilot that was just so brilliantly directed and brilliantly acted. I mean, Demaine and Shanola, and I just thought, wow, to be a part of this would be an honor, and to work with NK, who has a reputation for just strong leadership, and not just strong leadership, but just being a benevolent leader, which those two things are not mutually exclusive. You can be both, and NK is such a visionary. She knew what she wanted. She handed me a Bible, and it was a very thick one. It was, here's the first four or five seasons of the show. And I thought, well, this is going to be amazing, because I can just jump in and do my job. And she set me and the writers up to win, to succeed. And what really, for me, why I connected with the show was I just connected to Gabby. I mean, the fact that there's no judgment with her friends. The fact that all of the members of MNA can heal in their own time, at their own pace, without judgment. They're allowed to regress. They're allowed to go to therapy. They can talk, they cannot talk. And I think there's so much pressure in our culture to heal, and to heal within 24 hours of trauma, and it is okay. It is okay to heal at a slow pace. It is okay if you never heal and you just say, I'm going to wear this trauma for the rest of my life, but I'm going to funnel it into writing. Hello, that would be me. I tap into my trauma, and I want to use it to help others, and to write things that hopefully move people. And so I felt seen, and I felt heard, and I just really wanted to be a part of it.
So what I'd like to do is I want to roll a clip, and then I want to dive into the data, the story, the themes, talk a little bit about the writer's room and bringing lived experiences in. So Jasmine, let's run the next clip, which is Missing While Widowed.
Miss Mosley, are you listening?
I'm listening, Cliff. The last time you saw Reggie, he was going on his usual coffee run, newspaper in hand. He was wearing navy slacks, a forest green button-down shirt, and navy fedora. He carried his blazer with him because the coffee shop is always a little chilly.
Do you know anything about Reggie's personal life? His friends, romantic relationships?
He's a bit of a loner. It's his personality. He was a music teacher, very creative. But ever since his husband died, he's cocooned himself even more. He loves his routines. I think they're his saving grace.
You don't think Reggie just took a trip on a whim?
Oh, no, that's just not him. He always tells me in case there's a delivery or something. This is Reggie.
Chopin, Nocturne number 2.
Yes, in E flat.
My dad played. Why haven't you reported Reggie's disappearance to the police?
I read about you, Miss Mosley. And I know you care for everyone. I'm just not confident the police would care about a missing gay black widower in his 70s. And it's only been 2 days, and my only real evidence is the absence of our morning conversations. They'd probably laugh me out of there. Most of the residents don't look me in the eye when I open the door for them or deliver their food or dry cleaning. Reggie sees me. He's a good person. Can you help find Reggie?
We will.
This clip gives me chills. So for our audience, I want to add some data to this, and then I want to get back to the themes. And at the beginning of this conversation, we talked about changing the world. So nearly 300,000 women who are missing, in the US. People of color are 40% of these missing people, and the majority being under the age of 20 years old. And although Black women and girls make up 18% of all missing persons cases, they're only 7% of the population. So when we talked about marginalized communities, and you see clips like this, and I want to go back to NK, and also I want to go back to Sonae about the intent in terms of engaging audiences, and also in the writer's room. And I don't know if this was a surprise, but so many of these episodes and the stories in the writings room became very personal. So I'd love for both of you to talk about that.
Yeah, it is absolutely very much intentional. The idea is these are the stories about the forgotten ones, is how I refer to them. They are the people that, for whatever reason, the world has deemed disposable. And so when they go missing, they don't necessarily get the same spotlight from the media, and for various amounts of reasons, do not necessarily get the same resources from the police force, whether it's budgetary, whether it's systemic racism. There are a ton of reasons. And it's not, even with those statistics, it's not specific just to Black women. It is specific to other. And so on our show, it was very important. Of course, I started with a case about a young missing Black girl, because that's me. And that was very personal to me. But the stories we got to tell, we let my writers understood sort of the assignment, as we like to say. They understood the mission of the show and the type of stories we wanted to tell. And then we gave them personal ownership over, it was never, you have to do this case, I want to make sure we have this case. It was, these are the parameters the cases have to fall under. What's important to you under those parameters? And so this particular episode, and I got so emotional watching it again, because I love our survivors, which is what I call them, so much. They live in my head, they live in my dreams. And so revisiting Cliff and just hearing everything and the relationship between him and this other man and their reunion in the hospital at the end of the episode, I got all emotional over again. I sat in editing for hours. I have seen this a gazillion times, and it still all feels very fresh and new. And part of that is because of the writer of this episode and how personal that story was to him, and how important it was for him to humanize Black, gay, elderly, who check all sorts of boxes in terms of the world feeling that there's a certain amount of disposability in them. And listening to Sonae talk, and I'll have her jump in a minute, this is the perfect example of why she's great for this. A lot of personal things get discussed in the writer's room. There's always a disclaimer. It's Fight Club. What happens in the writer's room stays in the writer's room. People's personal stories. The writers have been so generous with their personal stories. And we were talking about something yesterday, and a writer shared a very personal story. And it was one of those moments where it was so perfect for the episode and everything. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so great for the episode. And Sonae literally stopped, and she turned around. She made sure we stopped as a room, and she turned around and she thanked that writer for sharing something so personal to them about their backstory with us. And for it, and in that, I was just like, this is everything that is perfect about Sonae for this role. Because as people are being so generous with these stories that are generating these episodes that people care about so much, we have to stop, and they don't have to do that. This is make believe. They will come up with impactful stories even without digging that deep into their trauma. And for Sonae to make sure we stop as a room collectively and acknowledge that and thank them for that is everything that makes her the best work wife I could possibly have for this project.
Thank you, NK. I love you.
It's true.
Thank you. I mean, just jumping off of what NK said. I mean, yeah, the writers are brilliant. We are in the first week of season 2, and the writers are already talking about cases, and the cases that they've been thinking about it, over the course of the strike and in the holiday season. I mean, they are also passionate about this. And I always say that I am you know, I am so grateful that you choose to share your personal story, but it is by no means a requirement. You are here for your talent, first and foremost, and the fact that you choose to share anything personal is a gift. And it's interesting because maybe season 10 is when maybe we'll run out of all of the personal things, and then we'll start reading New York Times and ripping things from the headline. But Madeline, for now, this is all, and I want to just stress, it's not all biographical, but it's all personal. You know, it's all with Demain just sharing the story. You know, we are in the room and we're talking about those personal stories because it was us or a friend or a neighbor or something. We are just pulling from personal experiences and what we've seen and what we've heard. And it's just been a gift, and it's very organic, and there's no need for me to really structure these days because everything is just so organic in the way it happens every day in the room.
So I'm going to go to Shanola because we have to unpack the man in the basement. But before I do, I did want to talk about, we're talking about personal experiences and awareness and engagement in the audience. And I know, NK, you know, you're hoping that this can bring light and reinforce the Black and Missing Foundation. And, you know, there may be people listening here who may be like, well, okay, I love the show, but then is there something I can do in my real life? So I just want to have you address that. And then we're going to go talk about Gabby and Sir.
Absolutely. You know, it's interesting because the Black and Missing Foundation, they do such phenomenal work. And they are an organization that literally sort of combs through everything and focuses on missing people of color, and specifically people in the Black community. And this is personally from them. They are donating their time. It sort of originated with a family member for one of them who went missing, and they sort of came together for that, and then wanted to, kind of like Margaret does, use their pain and their personal experience to help bring other people home. I've been very familiar with their work. I was not as familiar with the people behind the foundation, while I was familiar with the fact that the foundation existed and was doing this great work. And then I would never forget meeting Natalie, who is one of the co-founders. She came to this special screening of our premiere before it aired. And I was so in awe of her and everything. And then as she started to talk, I realized, oh my God, she has so many character traits of Gabby's that was unintentional, but just when you're that focused on that kind of work. And listen, it doesn't take much to get me to cry, as you know, my husband knows, as I'm watching General Hospital every day. But we were sitting in that screening and she was sitting next to me, and we finished the episode, and I suddenly realized I was holding my breath because it was so important to me that she didn't feel that what we did was going to detract from what they do, and that it would actually help enhance what they do, because that's my whole purpose, is for this show to make a difference. And I'll never forget, she grabbed my hand and she just looked over at me and she's like, you have no idea how many lives you're going to save. And then I just started weeping. And that is really my hope for the show, is that while we're entertaining people, and I know Shanola's about to get into the Gabby Sir stuff, while people are so fascinated by that, if even one person in one home suddenly pays attention differently to when people go missing, or the van that drives by and they hear a noise, or a weird person, if one more person pays attention, that increases the chances of a missing person coming home. And then we've done our jobs. That is all my hope is that if we affect more than one, that's great. But even if one person changes their behavior because of this show and is paying closer attention, that's potentially one more life we save.
Thank you so much for that. So now, Shanola, we have to unpack the dynamics between Gabby and Sir, for you as actors, as producers, the chemistry, like, tell us everything. Did you know each other before? Like, all of that.
No, thank God. I can't imagine Mark Paul being in my life even a minute more. Yeah, I know. No, we didn't know each other, but we are now very dear friends. In probably 2 minutes, I will have a text message that popped up from him, because we are constantly in communication. Mark Paul has a pedigree, and he'll tell you 40 years in the business. Sit down somewhere, sir. But so you don't know what you're going to get when someone has been in the business for that long. And I was actually surprised. I had nothing to do. He and NK had a conversation and she told me, so I didn't know what to expect. I'm a very big personality. If you look at us together, it shouldn't work. We're the yin and the yang. He is brooding in the corner. No, he's not. He's lovely. But compared to me, he's very, very, very quiet. He's very quiet anyway. But so it shouldn't work, but it did. And the reason why it worked is because it was organic. We don't rehearse. We don't even go over lines together. We come prepared and ready to play. Mark Paul is so without ego, and his preparation is not about how am I going to look good saying this, which many actors do. Many actors do. They do their rehearsal in the mirror and it has to go that way in the scene, or if it doesn't, then they are all kinds of out of sorts. And Mark Paul wasn't. From the moment we locked eyes in the pilot episode, and he didn't know me from Adam and I didn't know him from Eve. But when that camera said rolling and we looked at each other, there was an immediate trust of, you know, and I know what we got to do here. And we just did it. And it's been like that for the entire, and we got the question a lot about our chemistry. For me, chemistry either happens or it doesn't. And some chemistry can even be faked. But it's no faking with us. It just is completely organic and special. It means so much to me as an actor. It means so much to me to be able to unpack and to be able to play. That's why I like doing what I do. I can't stand the business part of the business. I like to act. And I like to be in scenes, and I like to be with people who feel the same way about the artistry of acting and digging deep and pulling back layers, and to have this character that has so many layers that you haven't seen before. You don't see women that are the heroes that are also could be the villain or not making all the right choices, but and they are so strong, yet they're so childlike. You don't get to do that. So to be able to have this kind of dimension in a role on network television, and you look like me, and then to act opposite someone who has so many layers to play and is willing to play has been really, really beautiful and such a gift. Thank you, NK.
I mean, it shows. Before we go to Q&A, I want to squeeze in one more clip because we started this conversation with a land acknowledgement. And when we think about marginalized communities and communities that have historically been forgotten, the Indigenous community is definitely at the top of the list. So Jasmine, let's play Missing While Indigenous, and then we'll jump into some Q&A before we wrap.
Rose said Ada was here?
Yeah, but Lacey, we have to handle this carefully.
Lacey, wait.
Where's Danae? We know you were at the gas station. What happened? You go into labor? You killed that baby too?
Lacey! Stop! You can't go in there, please! You just disrupted a woman in the process of transitioning into the spirit world.
I set clear boundaries and you blew right past them, interrupting a sacred ceremony and accusing my wife for somehow being responsible for Danae's disappearance. The disrespect that you have shown me in this community is inexcusable.
It's my fault. What happened back there, the way I reacted, it wasn't like me, and I'm sorry.
It was never our intention to disrespect your community, and for that we apologize. But the fact still remains that Ada was the last person to see Danae, and she lied about it. There's video proof.
Ada, what are they talking about?
Damn it, answer her. Did Danae go into labor? Did something happen to her or the baby?
I swear, I'm not responsible for her disappearance.
Just like you aren't responsible for that mom and baby that died under your care?
Did May tell you that? Did she also tell you that her sister-in-law had eclampsia? There was nothing I could have done to save either of them.
Why was Danae upset on the video?
Because I told her that I changed my mind about delivering her baby. There was always so much arguing and hostility between Kai and Danae, so I told her it would be best for her to have her baby in DC. But then, when I found out she was missing, I felt guilty. I was the one who turned her away.
I want you off my reservation.
This is not about you, Kai. So they're staying.
You do what you want, but I'm gonna continue this search without them.
So incredibly powerful. So we have hundreds of people. We have a ton of questions, and I know I could hog this conversation. But Jasmine, are you going to come on and ask some questions?
Sure. Yeah. Like you said, we have many, many questions. I think we only have time for maybe one or two, but I will jump right into it. This question comes from Patty. Love the show, your collective energy and shared passions in changing the narrative and entertainment to be more inclusive, which also includes who gets to be in the decision-making room. How do you see the business of storytelling progressing as you move from minority to new majority?
It's interesting. I get this question a lot in terms of, what do I think is going to, I don't know that anything is going to change. My passion for telling these stories is always going to be my passion for telling these stories, and my passion for bringing the next generation through the door while I have it open, so that God forbid if the door ever closes, it's like, too late, we're here. That is shared amongst so many women I know, especially so many women of color I know, that I just feel like it's compelling storytelling. It is not just the right thing to do, but it also is like, it's good business. Like, at the end of the day, this industry is a business, and we will hear a lot about, does this make money, or it's about if this makes money or not. I do this for many reasons, but at the end of the day, this kind of storytelling, the push for inclusivity and diversity, and quite frankly, especially for people to get out of the way and just let us women do what we do, is that it is good business. And at the end of the day, that's going to be the justification to continue to move in this direction in the industry. And I can't predict what's going to happen. I cannot predict how people are going to react to what will hopefully one day be such an exponential increase in the women decision makers in this industry. But what I can say is, for people like those of us on this Zoom, and I speak for these other women because they're dear friends of mine, and we've all worked together for so long, is we're not going to stop pushing to tell these kinds of stories.
I also think it's just worth pointing out that Susan Rovner and Lisa Katz were women who decided to take a shot on this. And the more women that are in real positions of power, the more people of color in real positions of power, the more diversity you're going to see. And to be honest, and good storytelling is good storytelling. And it could be like, there's like, Mad Men was great storytelling. I watched that show. I didn't like, it wasn't me on the screen, but I watched the hell out of it, and emotionally it felt like, and so I just think great storytelling, but telling, also, people are pretty sophisticated viewers now. You all have watched a lot of things, so finding new people to highlight and new stories to tell just makes it more interesting. And I do think it's good business, and I think I think The Economist has not died inside of NK.
And I think, just adding to that, I think what naturally happens is you're dispelling the stereotypes that have been so harmful since the beginning of storytelling, right? I mean, we're controlling the narrative. And, we talk about this a lot in our room, like NK, we've talked about the myth of the strong Black woman, because she is not just one thing, right? She is many things. She is strong, she is vulnerable, she is a lot of things. And so what naturally happens, and for me, what's just so important is changing the narrative for people of color and how we see them on screen.
Great. I know we're running out of time, but I think this last question could segue into your last question, Madeline. But overall consensus in the Q&A is that people love the show. They're grateful that these stories are being told. And a lot of people want to know what they can expect in the finale and possibly in season 2. I know we're not going to give spoilers away, but people are anxious, want to know what's going on.
I am notorious for threatening all of my talent if they dare spill spoilers. So Shanola's sitting here like, I don't know. I don't know what happens ever. But I think what we can promise is that it has been from minute one with Gabby and Sir and with the family she's created at MNA, it has been a speeding train out of the gate. Them running from their trauma, them running towards healing, the back and forth of Sir and Gabby. And so what we can promise you leading into the finale is that that train is gonna dock, to mix my metaphors, because I know trains don't dock, but that train is going to dock with quite the bang that will set us up for season 2 of the show, and how this particular incredible group of characters who are so flawed and so layered and so brilliant and just all those things, how they respond to this new landmine going off in their lives. And that is all I will say.
Thank you for that. So homework assignment, your mission, if you decide to take it, everybody, is you all have to watch the finale, get your viewing parties together. For January 16th, what's fabulous is that we know there's going to be a season 2, and we know there will be other seasons as well that can happen. And I just want to say thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for participating in this conversation. Thanks to the hundreds of people who took time out of their day. And we just can't wait. Just can't wait.
And
Thank you so much.
you to the Gina Davis Institute. The work you guys do is incredible. We're so
Yes.
grateful. And it's so
Grateful.
helpful to help us do what we do and keep everyone honest and real. So thank you guys so much, because it really, like, it's always so informative and it's really helpful, you know.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I appreciate it. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madeline. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.